Good morning. This is the special review session for Wednesday, November 17th, 2021 of the New York City Planning Commission. The time is 10:01 a.m. and a quorum is present. We begin with item 1 on our agenda, which is a City Council modification scope determination for the Gowanus Neighborhood Plan. Jonathan Keller is here to walk us through.
Thank you. Good morning, commissioners. We are happy to be here today to share the City Council proposed modifications to the land use actions that would facilitate the Gowanus Neighborhood Plan. Specifically, the City Council is considering modification of the zoning text amendments. The Commission voted to approve the zoning text amendments and the related applications on September 22nd. And on November 10th, City Council Land Use Committee voted unanimously to approve the Gowanus Neighborhood Plan with the following modifications. Next slide. First, in regard to use and floor area regulations, the proposed modifications would adjust the permitted uses in M and mixed use districts, drawing on years of research and work, including the North Brooklyn Plan and info briefs like the 2018 Can Industrial Mixed Use Buildings Work in New York City. The CPC approved zoning text expanding the underlying permitted uses, particularly by including use groups 3 and use groups 4 and others for both M manufacturing districts and mixed use districts. This modification would decouple these uses and districts. Similarly, the modification would also reinstitute retail cap sizes in manufacturing districts in the M14 districts proposed, and add a cap size of 25,000 square feet in the mixed use districts. The modification would also move gyms and health clubs and other use group 9 uses to the retail and entertainment definition, which caps these uses to 2 FAR in the special Gowanus mixed use district. Additionally, the CPC approved text included a higher as of right FAR for schools at 4.8 FAR. The council modifications would reduce that to be in line with the max FAR for community facilities for any given district. The modification would also add conditions by which the mixed use authorization could be granted to include developments that comprise 20% Gowanus mixed uses that do not exceed 300 feet in height and where existing buildings occupy at least 20% of the lot. And before moving on to the suite of Gowanus mixed modifications on the next slide, the council modification would also remove MIH option 2, which would leave options 1 and 3 in the Gowanus rezoning area. So on the Gowanus mixed regulations, the council would also make a series of modifications, including removing certain uses or use groups, including use group 3, use group 4A, etc., and including certain use groups the council feels lean more retail or commercial. And the modification would also add in use group 17B. The modifications would also lower the maximum FARs for non-Gowanus mixed uses in the proposed M14 manufacturing districts. In other words, other commercial, community facility, and industrial uses would have a lower maximum FAR than the Gowanus mixed uses. It would increase the incentives in the proposed M14 R7X districts from a 0.4 to 0.6 with a commensurate reduction in residential FAR of 0.2. I have a few slides to show that graphically coming up. The two incentives, the non-residential underlying incentive and the Gowanus mix, would be nominally linked. And the inclusion of the Gowanus mixed uses would come with a requirement of recording of a notice of restrictions against the property of a developer, including the Gowanus mixed uses, and submitting an annual monitoring report. Next slide. The next 2 slides show these incentives, the increase of the incentives geographically, and the anticipated effect should a developer decide to include these in their development. First, here is the CPC approved incentive structure. The 2 incentives, 1 non-residential and 1 Gowanus mix at 0.2 FAR each for a total of 0.4. The graphic here shown is something hopefully you're familiar with. It's the prototypical site around Thomas Green Playground. The ground floor requirements in red stack incentives to produce 2 floors of non-residential and active space below residential. Next slide. And here is the proposed council modification with the lower residential FAR at 5.4. and higher incentive FAR at 0.6. And if you can see, hopefully you can on your screen, sorry if it's tiny, we believe this would, again, using the Thomas Green prototypes, lead to a small portion of the third floor devoted to these incentives. And it's shown here on the third floor with a red outline and yellow coloring inside. Next slide. And lastly, there are height and setback modifications. One is a pure and simple clarification to avoid any interpretation issues regarding tower locations at parcel 8A, which is located at Carroll and Evans Street. And the other modification shown here, illustrated here, would lower the height limits on a block frontage south of Thomas Green Playground between Nevins and which is illustrated again on this slide. And that's the council modifications. Upon review, the department believes that the modifications are within scope. Happy to take questions, but before I do, I'd be remiss if I didn't note for the benefit of my superstar colleagues, Sagi and Amartha and the rest of the team, that no modifications to the WAP or canal heights or the proposal along the canal or the districts or district boundaries are being considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Are there any questions from the commission? I see Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Jonathan. I just wanted, with regard to the removal of option 2 of the MIH, does that mean literally within the zoning impacted area, option 2 could never be considered by any applicant?
That's right. So we certified, the department certified options 1, 2, and 3 into public review. I believe Commissioner Levin asked the question sometime in August at one of the post-hearing follow-ups, and indicated, Councilmember Lander had indicated publicly that his intention was to move forward with just options 1 and 3. And that is what they're moving forward with. So options 1 and 3 would be applicable within the entire rezoning area where residential is allowed. And option 2 would not be applicable. So option 2 would not be available to a developer.
I just wonder, is that legally sustainable? I mean, I know option 2 does not carry great favor in the council, but that's for somebody else to determine, I suppose. Okay, thank you.
I will just state that the way we crafted MIH, it is the council's option to decide which options apply. But I would ask Jonathan if you understood the rationale for the elimination of option 2.
Yeah, it comes down to really the council members wanting the affordability levels to go deepest, and not having that option 2 at a higher level is something that they didn't want for Gowanus.
For the commissioners, option 3 is the deep affordability option. That's right.
Affordability.
Yeah.
That's right. And you really can't. You have to have 1 and 3.
But he kept 1, so
Yeah, they kept 1.
Yeah.
Well, and I believe the way MIH was crafted, you have to have 1 or 2, and you can't sort of get rid of 1 and just have 3. So they needed to have 1 and couple it with 3. So.
we'll see how that works. Commissioner Dweck, you had a question. Your hand was raised.
No, thank you. I think everything was clarified. The only thing I'd like to just state again is it's within scope. So really our determination is only with regard to the scope. So
that's all we're determining. Yes. Thank you. Okay, so are there any other questions? I don't see any others. So we asked to send a scope determination letter to the council that these modifications are within scope. So if you agree, let me hear an aye, please.
aye.
Any opposed? Nays? Okay, so we will send this scope determination letter. And thank you very much, Jonathan, for explaining those mods.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Moving on, item 2 on our agenda is a city council modification scope determination for the New York Blood Center. Stephen Johnson is here to describe.
Good morning, commissioners.
Ryan, can you just note my recusal on the matter?
That's right. Yes, Commissioner Dweck is recused on this matter. Thank you.
So the New York City Council has proposed modifications to the New York Blood Center application. The project is to develop a new modern life science hub with commercial laboratory space and community facility space for the Blood Center at their existing site at 310 East 67th Street in Manhattan Community District 8. Then City Council on November 10th, the Land Use Committee of the City Council by a vote of 15 to 2 to 1 recommended modifications to the special permit application. The modifications are centered around the building height and massing and include the reduction in overall building height to 233 feet, including mechanicals, from the previous 332 feet. There's also an 11-foot setback incorporated into the mechanical screen wall at the top of the building. There was a reduction in the height to 218 feet to the top of the building parapet. And the base height is proposed to be reduced by approximately 12 feet to 72 feet. Next slide, please. The rear yard waivers are revised from floors 5 to 16, including mechanicals, to floors 5 through 13, including mechanicals. The total zoning floor area is revised from approximately 451,800 square feet to 393,200 square feet. The maximum commercial floor area for the scientific research and development facility is reduced by 166 square feet to 312,600 square feet. And the amount of community facility floor area is proposed to be reduced by 14,600 square feet to 124,434 square feet. Next slide, please. On the ground floor, the applicant has reduced the number of loading berths from 5 to 4 and the number of bike parking spaces from 14 to 13 spaces. And as outlined in the technical memorandum that was included in your briefing packages, the department has reviewed the modifications being considered by the council, and the proposed modifications would not result in any land use impacts or significant adverse environmental impacts not already identified in the FEIS for the proposed action. And the department believes that the mods are within scope, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Stephen on the mods to this action? Commissioner Marie.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I have a question. If you can put up the drawing again, once again, where you reduce the loading berths from 5 to 4. My question would be, is this drawing updated? Is it going to be updated, or is the plan to have that curb cut extend the entire length and only have one truck park in the berth? Because it is showing still the same space.
So I think what the applicant did is they looked at their requirements for the loading berths, and they kind of rejiggered how their layout's going to be. And they're going to be using that space where a truck is showing on the original application for just moving around waste and recycling and other garbage. So I don't think there is any intention of making that area, that curb cut, any smaller.
So the intention is to have it be a staging area, but the curb cut will remain there.
Yes.
As designed. Thank you.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure if I heard you correctly, but you said the building, with regards to the building height, you said it was going to be 218 feet, but taken to the parapet. Isn't building height usually taken to the roof structure?
So
in terms of determining height?
So the 233-foot height is including the mechanical. So that's the actual height of the building. But the building parapet is going to 218.
Okay.
Around the building. But the 233 feet is the building height.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Levin.
Yeah, I just want to note that, I'm really delighted with this modification, but I also regret that we didn't have the opportunity to consider this modification when it came before the City Planning Commission. And to observe or express dismay that the public discussion about this application is really devolved into a yes or no vote. Do you want to see life sciences expand? Do you want to support the Blood Center? Or do you just want this building to go away? And I think our discussions at the Planning Commission need to be much more nuanced than that, and to allow for a modification of plans along these lines. Had we had this modified proposal before us at the commission, I would have been in full support of it. I'm happy that it's been modified by the council, but I think we've got serious problems with our land use review process that didn't give us the opportunity to consider this.
Thank you, Commissioner Levin. I will just note, though, that from the department's perspective, what we approved, we actually very much supported and believed was appropriate. And there is always the challenge of having an applicant believe that making modifications at this juncture will still result ultimately in a project that is feasible for them, understanding, a council member's perspective on it. So there's a challenge there, and it would, I agree, be better if we had more latitude. It's just a challenge in the way politically these projects get done. It just is, and I am sharing your delight.
I'm just making a comment on the swing of the balance of that political land use dynamic that I've observed over my 12, 13 years on the commission.
Yes, I get it. Mhm. Okay, are there any other questions from the commission? If not, thank you very much, Stephen. And now we are asked to vote on this council letter, and to send a letter whether these modifications are in scope. And I will ask for all those who support the determination that the modifications are within scope to say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, so we will send this letter to the city council. Thank you very much. Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks, Stephen. Item 3 on our agenda is a city council modification scope determination for 343 Madison, the MTA headquarters. I'll note that Commissioner Cirillo and Commissioner Capelli are recused on this item.
Thank you, Ryan.
Morning, Commissioners. I'm here to discuss the 343 Madison Avenue project located in the East Midtown neighborhood of Manhattan Community District 5. The project, involving a new 925,000 square foot commercial office building, is a partnership of the Boston Properties and MTA, which the CPC voted to approve on September 22 of this year. The project is currently being deliberated by the City Council, who have proposed modification to the project's street wall. Next slide, please. The project was originally proposed with a street wall height of 321 feet, exceeding the regulation of 150 feet on all 3 street frontages. The 321-foot height roughly corresponded to the top of the mechanical tower of the eastern neighboring site, which is the landmarked Yale Club, which you can see outlined in the right on the figure here. Next slide, please. On approval of the project, the Commission required a reduction in the street wall height to be generally consistent with the cornice of the Yale Club, which sits at about 295 feet, which is a prominent feature of the building and of that neighborhood. The intent of the Commission here was to ensure that the street wall and associated bulk width will be perceived from the streetscape to contribute to and be harmonious with the existing built form cues of the neighborhood as required by the special permit findings. Next slide, please. The City Council is now seeking to modify the street wall with a further reduction, which is about 8 feet, or to an estimated level of 287 feet above street level. The intent of this reduction is to ensure that on behalf of the Yale Club, the bulk of the new building's podium is not imposing upon or overlooking the Yale Club's restaurant and terrace that it roughly aligns with. Next slide, please. So the figure on the right shows the Yale Club's distinct green cornice with the restaurant and terrace just above. With the proposed reduction, 343 Madison street wall would not exceed the green line, a level that will be confirmed by a survey to be done in future. The department has reviewed the modification and determined no land use implications arise for the CPC's determination or the environmental review of the project. A note also that the materials in your packets, they suggest that this change will require a revision to about a dozen of the approved drawings. And that's not the case. The department will implement this via a notation placed on 3 of the drawings, which will be updated by the applicant to implement this urban design change. Next slide, please. So the recommendation here is for a scope determination letter to be sent to the City Council, noting their modification remains in scope. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Scott. Are there any questions from the commission? I don't see any. That was the simplest of the 3 that we had to date. So thank you very much, Scott. So the commission is asked to send the city council a letter determining that the modifications they proposed are within scope. Can I get an aye from the commission if you believe that those modifications are within scope? Say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, thank you. So we will send this letter to the city council. Thank you very much.
All right, that concludes the special review session for today. Time
Okay.
is 10:23.